All right, I want to welcome all of you to the Hononegah Honors Algebra 2 lesson on section 11.3. Um, First off, I also want to say hope everybody's doing well, and hopefully this will be a fairly short video and you're able to get the homework assignment done. Please, if you have any questions or something that we can help you with, please email us. We'll be more than happy to help you out. So here we go, 11.3, different types of collecting data. There are many different ways of sampling the population by a random sample. Random sample is preferred because it's the most likely representative of the population. In a random sample, each member of the population has an equal chance of being selected. Now, there are other types of samples that we'll observe on the next page. Each of these samples has different advantages and disadvantages, like reasons that you might choose to do this type of sampling. So here we go. Self-selected sample. A self-selected sample is basically a survey. You're volunteering to give your information. So if I send a survey out to all the seniors and only the ones that actually sent the survey back were the only data or the only information that you had. So a self-selected sample is basically people that are willing to volunteer their information. A systematic sample means it has a rule. So a rule is used to describe. So maybe you're talking to every other person, or you're talking to every fifth person, or you're talking to, every 10th person in a particular. So again, if it has a rule involved, that is considered a systematic sample. A stratified. Now this is probably the best version other than just random sampling. As a population is divided up into smaller groups, but then it is a random selection from those groups. So it's not truly a random sample. So it's divided up into groups first, but then it's a random selection beyond that. A cluster sample. A population is divided up into groups, and you ask everybody in a particular cluster. So you pick out a group, so the members in one or more cluster. Okay, so you, again, have to divide them up into groups and then talk to people at one group. And then convenience sample. And I'll be honest with you, we don't use convenience sample very often because ultimately a lot of these you may consider to be convenient, but only members in a population that are easily to reach or easy to talk to. So that is a convenience sample. So here we go. Here's some examples. This is what your test will look like. You want to determine whether the student in your school liked the new design of a school's website. Identify the different types of samples. So you list all the students alphabetically and choose every sixth person. So again, if it has a rule involved, like you have decided that this is how this is going to go, that is considered a systematic sample. You mail questionnaires and and use only the questionnaires that are returned. Again, this would be a self-selected, because again, you're looking for volunteers that are willing to give their information. You ask all the students in your Algebra 1 class. Now, the book and I may disagree with this. The book is going to say that is convenience. The reason that is convenience is because ultimately it's easy for me to talk to my class. I would also consider this to be a cluster because you divide it up into classes and then you've talked to one class. So again, I can argue on either side on that one. You randomly select 2 students from each classroom. So now, because that's the entire building and you're randomly selecting, that is considered a stratified sample. All right. Different types of biases in sampling. A bias is an error that results in the misrepresentation of a population. In order to obtain a reliable information and draw accurate conclusions about a population, it is important to be an unbiased sample. An unbiased sample is the representation of the population that you want information about. A sample that overrepresents or underrepresents part of the population is again considered biased. When a sample is biased, the data is invalid. A random sample is really the only way to go if you run a true unbiased sample. So if you want an unbiased sample, everything needs to be random. Now, let's talk about why these different things are biased. And again, they want the type of sample. So we're going back to what we talked about just a little bit ago, and then explain why the sample is biased. The principal asked students at one lunch table about the quality of food served at the school's cafeteria. First of all, I would consider that to be a cluster again, because you're talking about one table, and then because they're divided up into tables. So again, divided up into groups, and you talk to everybody in one group. there's a lot of reasons why this might be considered biased. You're talking about all of them could be friends. So they're going to have similar viewpoints. It's not random for that matter. Okay, so anytime you don't have something that's random, again, there's some type of bias involved. A sports announcer wants to know how often people in the town attend sporting events. She asks every 10th person in attendance at the local soccer game. All right, so that would be considered systematic because you came up with a rule as to how you are going to ask your questions. There's, again, a variety of reasons. You're talking about sports in a town and you're actually talking to people that go to sports. So again, it's not random. So that makes it somewhat biased there. And you're talking to people at an event. So again, that is why this would be considered bias, because you want to talk about people in the community going to sporting events and you're talking to people already at the sporting events. You're in charge of the senior class prom. You want to poll the members of the senior class to find out if the prom should be held. There are 415 students in the senior class. Describe the method of selecting a random sample of 70 seniors to poll. So if you want to get a random sample, how are you going about doing that? Well, here's probably the best way. You're going to number students 1 to 415 and randomly select. Analyzing. There are several ways to collect data in a statistical study. The objective of a study often dictates the best method of collecting data. So again, if I want to study, how do I go about studying? So experiment. You impose something on individuals or in order to collect data or the responses to a particular treatment. A treatment may be a medical treatment. It could be anything in which you are going to affect the variable in the experiment, such as adding something. That is an experiment. So that's one type of collection data. Observation, this is when you're going to sit back and just watch. Okay, so maybe I'm going to sit back and watch and see how many students are going to come in and sit down quietly and actually do their homework. Okay, next, a survey. So now you're talking about an investigation in which I am asking questions, or every member in the sample is asked a question. Okay, that's a survey. And a simulation, this is a lot of times when things are dangerous. Okay, a simulation is used to model and reproduce the conditions of a situation and then see the results to match the real world outcomes. So here we go. I'm going to give you some scenarios and I want to know which one of these type of data collections. A teacher records how many students enter the classroom and turn in their homework before sitting down at their desk. Since they're not imposing anything, oops, sorry about that. This would be considered an observational data collection. A manager uses a computer program to predict how many defective products can be expected on a particular assembly line. So now you're talking about a simulation, because you're simulating what is happening on a particular assembly line. And then a landscaper fertilizes 20 lawns with a regular fertilizer mix and 20 lawns with a new organic fertilizer, and the landscaper then compares the lawns after 10 weeks. So again, you are imposing something on the group, and so therefore this would be an experiment. And that's all for section 11.3. This is the homework assignment. It can be found on Google Classroom, or you can just get it out of the book. So it'll be on the Google Classroom as a PDF, or you can get the questions out of the book. And I apologize for the confusion there. I believe the one on the Google Classroom will be a little bit different, so I want to make sure 15 through 31 odd. So I apologize for that. Okay, please make sure that you get that. Hopefully there won't be any confusion there. If you do end up doing the even questions, it's not going to make any difference. Be safe, stay healthy, and hopefully we'll see you back in a few weeks.